fun. It's been a while since we've been able to do an AMA between me taking a little bit of vacation, getting engaged, and all the other things that have happened. I think it's been about a month or so. Happy to be here. Um, I just want to start off and say we see that there are already questions in the AMA channel. We'll definitely cover most of those. We'll also have time for questions towards the back end. To start it off, though, I think what would be great is to, oh, if you have your mic on, I hear some feedback, Neil. I think we're good now. Oh, no. Okay, we just had to mute someone. It's not personal, Neil. Okay, so yeah, let's start us off. Ultimately, we are going to get to community questions, and we'll take your questions if you have more towards the back end of this. But we really want to start off and just kind of go through some of the updates. I think first of all, I'll let Chris talk about the features he just pushed in just a second. But I'm going to go down kind of the agenda of what we'll talk about, and we can go into some of the details, and then open it up to community questions. So first off, I know a big one that we've been talking about is the payment systems. That's been a huge thorn in our side because we know how much it's affecting player growth. Progress is being made towards enabling a better on-ramp, and we're continuing to test the integration. We're working with Fun.xyz, and we are scheduled for integration. So no perfect timeline on that yet, but things are progressing, looking good. As for some of the other topics that we've had in patch notes prior, account-wide permissions, this is part of the next big quality of life changes in the client. Again, no perfect timeline, but it's part of the next phase here. Email notifications, brand new as of today, new feature, try it out. You can get emails about crew activity and actions being completed. So it's super exciting. Allow you to check in on the go more easily. Sabotage and repair mechanics. So this is kind of we've talked about this before, but Chris will go into more detail. I think he's excited to kind of share more of that. But this is a new mechanic. It's currently scoped out and it's being worked on. So really excited about that. Chris, I know we've talked about it, but we'll probably go into pretty good detail around that. And then crew movement. That's a new feature as of today. Thank you, Chris. You can now feel the belt come alive. You see all the crews moving around. So super, super excited about that one. It's something that's taking us another step further to making this actually feel like, there's many people in the world at the same time without just knowing that. You can actually see it. And then the propulsion program, which is a topic that has been brought up quite a bit. It's now running on StarkNet. We're working to determine the best way to make subsidies impactful. So more info on that probably coming soon. But other than that, right now, just know that we are working on it. Before I get to the DAO and some of the community questions topics, Chris, do you want to jump in and talk about some of those things that you've been working on?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think maybe to take a little step back, something that JP, I think you shared a link to the longish post I made about this maybe a couple days ago. But if anybody hasn't seen that, just talk a little bit about strategy and what we have over the last few months figured out and understood about where we are in the space and kind of how we need to approach growing, maintaining interest, etc. So you are all probably mostly aware as we were understanding the funnel. We started out having not a great top of funnel. Basically, we weren't very good at capturing the people we had coming in via ads. Ads is actually one of the things that we were quite good at even in the beginning. We've gotten better, quite effective for us to run ads, and generally the marketing spend is pretty effective. What wasn't effective was converting people into players. that was our initial focus. And we kind of said, let's start at the top and figure out how to grow. The best way to do that is start at the top of the funnel and work our way down. So we put a lot of effort into redesigning the website. We put a lot of effort into making sure that the wiki was up to snuff. And we put a lot of effort into the playable tutorial to give people a good idea of kind of what is influence right away, and get them some exposure to actually playing the game rather than first thing asking them, hey, pay for some crewmates. And all of those things actually were really effective. We had a lot of success with each of them. Um, I've shared numbers in the past, but like the website, we increased its conversion by 3x. Um, the wiki being in good shape resulted in higher conversions for people who first went looking for information about the game before coming back to then try the tutorial. And then the playable tutorial itself was very effective at preventing people from leaving the second they got to the store, which is where we kind of pushed people too early initially. Um, so all of those things worked, which is great. But then we kind of ran into like what's the next problem, and that's the big problem, and it's the one that we're really focused on resolving, and that is with payments. And this is, not necessarily a problem unique to influence. It's an issue that is a lot of ways one for crypto in general to deal with, and it's the fact that if you have a substantially on-chain product like we do, where um, part of what you're getting is ERC20 tokens and NFTs, and even in our case, having to pay for a little bit of gas so that you can get started. You have to use these on ramps, and to be frank, they kind of suck because right away I want to use my credit card, and I'm being asked probably for my social security number and to take a picture of my ID and a selfie. And it just feels a little excessive for, hey, I want to play a video game. And so that's the big piece we're working on right now. We identified that something like 95% of people were bouncing at that point. So for all the great work we had done on the top of the funnel, they were running headlong into this painful on-ramp process for payments. So we identified Fun as a great partner for that. They have access to better payment partners than those that we have used thus far, and we are working with them actively. I can't say it's going as fast as I would have hoped, but it is moving. We are working through that integration um, as we speak, and we are scheduled for integration. So it's going to happen. Um, in the meantime, some of these other items that the JP has brought up uh, have also been prioritized based on our understanding of the game. We actually learned a lot about retention. We've run a lot of numbers about what people like, or really where people like and where people drop out in the kind of timeline of events. And so things like notifications that were introduced today, I think is a pretty cool feature. So we have now, if you haven't seen it, when you go to um, build a building or extract material or do a core sample or whatever it is, you'll be prompted, or you'll see a notify me on completion checkbox. And if you check that, and you haven't already, you'll be prompted to put in your email. Right now, the only option is email, but we will have some additional notification options coming. But the reason that we focused on this is because one of the points that we identified where there's a drop off in players was on day one. Basically, people would go through the playable tutorial, buy a starter pack. They would kind of go through the day one activities, even enjoying the day one activities. But then, like can happen so often, because they then have to kind of go away and wait. They might forget about it. And if you forget about something, a game like Influence, or even if you can't go into it for a couple days for whatever reason, and it drops out of your mind, it may permanently drop out of your mind. So having the notifications and allowing us to get back in front of players a day later, I think can be really impactful, and
Put a mobile order in, Colby.
we'll see soon how impactful that is. Sorry, Captain Underpants, I'm muting you. I think it will be quite impactful. I'm pretty excited about it. I think that the notifications really help share like all of the things that you've been doing and what's going on, and you can jump right back into the game. Each of the little items that pops up and they're batched, so you don't have to worry about getting slammed with a notification every couple minutes. We batch them up, and you get a full list of all the things that you've done. And you can click on each one, and we actually have them now deep linked. So you click on it, it goes to the correct crew and even in the correct location for you to just go ahead and start pick up right where you left off. So that's great. I think another thing that if you've looked already, you've noticed in the settings is leases. So it reminds you when you have only a few days left on your leases. So we've heard, we know leases are somewhat problematic. There's been obviously a lot of drama about buildings being repossessed. And I think the biggest thing that we need to do is make extra sure that people know when that's happening. Of course, there's discussion about other features and functionality we can put around leases, auctions, and so on. We are absolutely considering and working on the possibilities of that. But in the meantime, we wanted to make sure that people would have the tools to make sure they don't forget. And so now you get that, you'll get an email like 3 days before your lease is up, which will be already 4 days into the alerts you would have seen in game. And so we're hoping that that extra added push will help make sure that people aren't forgetting and missing out on renewing their lease. And so in general, that's addressing between payments, the day one drop off, and then the month one drop off. Those are where we saw the most significant drop offs in retention across the board. So we're trying to address those. But by and large, to share with everybody again, if you didn't see it earlier, retention is pretty good. You guys are actually having fun. A lot of people are having fun, and that's great. Our retention rate is actually at or above industry standard, which is amazing. The game's in good shape. Of course, we will continue developing. There's more to do, but I think that's a good place to be. Now we just need to solve payments, and we're going to do everything we possibly can. We have some experiments coming up that we're going to do as well with potentially introducing very early game event chains that can issue sway, not random, but specifically linked to the things you do in early game, to the point where we may even be able to just sell crewmates as part of the starter pack, and then allow for the very early game sway to come in sort of as part of gameplay, so that we can push that payment friction off even one more step. Because if we do that, because of the wonderfully ridiculous regulatory legal system, it's fine for us to sell NFTs with traditional payment on ramps, but we can't do the ERC20 piece. We can't have people coming in and paying us and then turning around and sending them sway, because suddenly you become an exchange. So like that's kind of like the key issue that we're struggling with. But it's something that we're continually experimenting with and trying to figure out how we can resolve it. So trust that we are constantly thinking about how we're going to fix that, and we will ultimately fix it. But yeah, I mean, in general, like that's how we're working. We're looking at like, where are the issues? Let's attack those issues, and then in addition, kind of in parallel, it's the longer term content, the content that's coming with repair, with discovery, ultimately conflict, and that's really, I think, the more fun part, which I'm happy to talk about more in a minute. But I will pause for a second to see if maybe there's any questions, JP, on everything I just covered.
Yeah, I don't see any questions, about what you just spoke about, and we're probably still a little bit of time away from questions. So I would just continue.
Okay, let me take a sip of water then. Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about, I guess, the more interesting things. So activity, it's interesting stuff, like seeing where crews are moving. I think it adds a lot of life to looking at AP. It doesn't look like just sort of a lifeless asteroid anymore with some dots on it, but now you can actually see these slowly pulsating dots, and they're moving. You hover over them, and you see an actual crew where they're going. You can click on the crew, find out more about them, and that will be followed. I think I saw a question about this. Maybe it was in general. That will be followed with a more advanced version of the chat that is here today. So we do want there to be in-game private messages. I think that's something that has been identified as important by the community. We've heard not everybody's going to be going into Discord right away, and it's still very beneficial to be able to talk amongst players in the game. And so I think the first target is some maybe not like live DM chat. That's not really, I think, the best fit for a strategic asynchronous game. But having the ability to send mail back and forth, which, I mean, it could feel almost live if you're both online, but basically sending mail back and forth that you can then pick up when you come back and see the conversations that are ongoing between individuals in game. So that's coming. I think that, in addition to seeing activity on the asteroid, as well as an addition that's coming to seeing the actual paths of the ships moving through the belt, which right now you don't see. And I think it would be a pretty awesome visualization to actually see the routes that many different ships are taking through the belt. So that's going to be coming too. And I think that that's all that sort of activity and life that we can bring is something that we can then point to the broader ecosystem of strategy gamers, of people in blockchain who are interested in gaming, and just get them excited and get them involved. Even if that's not targeting traditional gamers with the traditional payment rails, there's still a group of people out there, I think, that can get excited about playing a game that uses blockchain in the right way, and come and join us. So that's maybe a little bit of hype is being the goal a little bit there, but I think regardless, it's really exciting to see the activity happening in the belt and see some sort of visual feedback of that. So, okay, moving on then. And this is moving on into future features, extension of content. We've been working on the concept around sabotage, repair, durability, and then a set of collaborative / competitive missions around terraforming. So I'll explain how they're all linked. The basic idea is that durability and repair are going to have a mechanic that is somewhat similar to the way food works today. So in the case of food, your crew requires food to operate at its maximum efficiency, and if that amount of food goes down over time, the efficiency starts to drop at a certain point. You'll find something similar in our goal for durability, where if buildings and ships are not repaired, they don't have enough of the materials required to repair the ship or repair the building, and that falls over time, their efficiency will fall as well. One significant and key difference between the durability and repair mechanic and the food mechanic is that those materials required to maintain durability at a high level will only fall when it's actually used. So whereas with your crew, that falls given time, in real time, no matter what, the buildings will only see their durability fall based on actual usage, which means you won't need to run around topping up every single one of your buildings and ships constantly to make sure that they're actually working, unless you use them. So I think the way then that will be integrated into this new sabotage mechanic. Sabotage is intended to be sort of like a PvP light. So it's not pure PvP. We're not introducing pew pew just yet, but it does introduce the ability to start to take some direct action against other players, and an intentionally direct action that's not, this repossessing buildings mechanic, which, although will always need to be there in some way, isn't exactly the most fun PvP in the world. So what Sabotage is going to do is it's going to allow, with using mostly the same type of resource, and this is not perfectly nailed down yet. It's an ongoing discussion about what that resource or resources are. But using those same types of resources that you do for repair, for increasing durability, you'll be able to attempt to sabotage other players' operations. So if you have a building that is in the middle of extracting, or a factory that's in the middle of a process run, you can attempt to sabotage that. The key thing, though, is that you can only do that if the durability is lower than 100%. So you as a player have a way to avoid that PvP. If you're consistent about keeping your buildings durability high, keeping them repaired, it sort of makes you sabotage proof. But if they do drop below, sabotage becomes possible. And the reason that this becomes key at this point, and why, Skippy, I mean, there's sort of the same way with food, where you don't need 100% of food to be at 100% efficiency. It's the same that you'll see with durability and repair. So your durability won't actually drop below 100% until the materials that are required drop below 50. So so the idea, the reason that this isn't being introduced alongside this idea of terraforming missions, these collaborative missions, is that it provides a reason for sabotage, and also just a reason in general. I think some of you, when you're playing, might ask, like, well, why am I doing this? Why am I building up my asteroid? What's it for? Where do we go from here? And I think that, the story here, of these survivors who came in on the Arvad, who settled in Adalia, they found first these 5 planets, hopeful that they were going to be able to settle somewhere, and the result was no, that they couldn't. But ultimately, we're human. I think we have a draw towards living on something like Earth. And so, although they have settled in the asteroid belt, what they're really looking for is how can we find our way back to a planet. And so this is the start of that process. Missions where the goal will be to send an expedition to a planet to identify its feasibility for terraforming. And then you can imagine missions in the future that might install a permanent base in orbit around that planet, eventually begin to terraform the planet, and so on. But the key thing with these missions is that everybody will be able to contribute to them. And so you'll be competing to be like, 1, 2, 3, first place, second place, third place as a contributor during that mission. And there will be rewards associated to being first, second, third. And furthermore, there will be the chance to get rewards, a weighted chance to get rewards based on any position, any contribution position. But because there will be those cutoffs, because being third will be valuable, being second will be that much more valuable, and so on. Sabotaging other players to prevent them from being third, or to let yourself bump into third, can be, I think, a really exciting focus of PvP, of PvP light here. So I can imagine, making those strategic decisions about, should I invest in making sure I can't be sabotaged? Should I play it a little bit loose so it's not so important, or so that it's so that I can attempt to outproduce my opponents? Should I be investing more early on during the mission period so that I can catch up later on, maybe even hold some materials back, playing like a little bit of a game of cat and mouse? So I think that these are all features that can tie together quite well. They introduce syncs that I know a lot of you have been talking about, but I think it also introduces a purpose. And I think we need a purpose. Building for building's sake is fun. I really enjoy it. I know a lot of you really enjoy it, but a purpose is great because it points us towards um, something to build for. So I'm really excited about that. It's not going to be coming tomorrow, but we are working on it, and I want to share more and more. I would really love to develop this much more in the open than we have in the past, to go along with the idea of building out a DAO, becoming more decentralized as a whole. So I'm going to share very shortly, either tomorrow or Monday, an outline of what we're thinking on this set of features, and I really hope that we can all work on it together, discuss it, get feedback, and implement it, as quickly as possible.
Chris, just due to your last statement there, do you want to hold off on maybe taking some explicit like questions around sabotage and how it's going to work and wait till the outlines out, or should we take the questions that I see?
I don't have a problem taking questions on it, but just keeping in mind that feedback is more than welcome, and it doesn't have to be thought of as a mandate or something that's already been fully decided. I think it's a feature set that I want to make sure is collaborative, and developed with all of your feedback.
Great. All right. Well, then I'll dive into a few questions here. The first one from Lambda is just what are the consequences of sabotage? What exactly happens?
That's a good question, and it's actually one of the least well-defined pieces of this mechanic. And there's a couple of options um, that we've been considering. I think the two most prominent options are probably that it either reduces the output of the ongoing process, whatever that may be, and the other being that it allows the saboteur to effectively steal some of the materials that are required for increasing durability. That would effectively do both. It would both take materials away from the person being sabotaged. The saboteur would get some of those materials based on some sort of random chance. And it would also subsequently potentially bring down the efficiency of the building that is being sabotaged, because they would now have fewer of those materials. So those are the kind of the two ideas that we're playing with. Maybe it's a combination of those as well.
So next question from Akana is that, can we see who sabotaged us? Not through, on-chain forensics, but is there going to be a feature to let us know, crew XYZ sabotaged your extractor?
Yes, I think you would certainly know. Whether that could be secret in the future, Shiva, I get your point there. But I think that given our current constraints, it's something that we would have to expose. And so I think the assumption should be that, yes, you will know who is sabotaging. And so there's a reputational risk there as well, of course.
Great. Okay. So then next question is, you know, is the equipment or, any of the efficiency that gets degraded going to be directly dependent on how many, parts that you're putting into sabotage, or will it be random chance?
Definitely want there to be a chance component, and the chance component should be significant. My thinking, at least initially, is that the sabotage, the amount that you would need for sabotage would be fairly set and consistent. And then the sabotage success is random and potentially based on skills and traits as well.
All right, let's see here. Any other questions regarding what happens on a failed sabotage? I think you would just lose the parts that you're putting into attempting to sabotage.
I think yes, at the moment that would be the net loss.
I see some comments around it, but I think until we get the outline, it's probably best to not go too deep here. let's see here. Another one. Will we get the mechanics for counter sabotage beyond just keeping the building at 100%?
Good question. What sort of counter sabotage mechanics would you like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the can of worms is opened, and now getting input from you guys is going to be how Chris ultimately decides what to go forward with. So, you know,
Yeah, I love the idea of putting skin in the game to risk themselves, and certainly it will require crew, yes, and crew time, yes. So there's the sense of loss of your crew's time as well as the materials you are required to spend on the sabotage. Um, potentially for no gain there, or no pain for your target. Um, but I don't know, maybe there's a potential that if there's a crew in the act of sabotage, it makes all of their buildings more vulnerable to sabotage or something along those lines.
yeah, a red alert comes out that you tried to sabotage someone.
Hit them now.
Yeah, maybe it's a reputational thing too. Your threat meter goes up.
Hmm.
Yeah, also Colgan, the idea around the traits for crewmates, like our security officers and things like that, definitely something I'm sure we should
Absolutely.
consider there. Okay, so I think we should put a pin in that one for now. Chris, was there any other topics you wanted to cover before we dive into some of these community questions?
DAO?
Yeah. Oh,
I
here
suppose, but I'm happy to talk about that. We could even just talk about that at the tail end of questions. Maybe it's something that there are questions on already. I think
Yeah, there
maybe there.
are. Maybe let's see here. I've got some notes around the DAO. I mean, I'll just go ahead and give a few notes around the DAO, and then we'll dive into it in a minute, and we can continue to talk about it because I think it's going to spur some questions. But I've seen a lot of questions around, when is the DAO going to happen? Who's responsible for it? What's it going to look like? And I want to be really clear that this is not a team effort in setting up the DAO. This is something the team is supporting. So we need the community to come together and decide what they want the DAO to look like. And once they do that, if you guys put together a proposal of some sort, we're already, we've been given some information from StarkNet. They're happy to give a grant to those who want to take on the challenge of like really forming the DAO and outlining what it's going to look like. And once it is formed, the team has 30 billion sway that's allocated and ready to be transferred to the DAO. So hopefully that maybe gives you guys some context. And we do have channels for anyone who hasn't seen them around the DAO in the Discord that a lot of conversation has already happened. And it's really important that you guys, voice your opinions. And if you want to have representation here, this is what DAOs are. They're decentralized autonomous organizations, and without your input isn't going to be, validated or invalidated. So, it's the start of it, and we'd like to have it happen sooner rather than later because we have the time for it right now, and we would love to make sure that we can do our best to making this game fully unstoppable. Without a DAO, I would say that it's still rather fragile. So to harden that, make it less fragile, getting the DAO set up. I know that I've seen people like Chabot and Thunder quite a few others talk a lot there. I think you guys are great candidates to work together or make competing proposals, whatever it might be. But you just know that you have our support and StarkNet support in forming this down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can say that StarkNet, the StarkNet Foundation, stands ready to hear proposals. They're eager to hear them, um, and are ready to support the formation of a DAO around influence. Um, partially due to the fact that influence accounts for something like 20% of all the traffic on StarkNet, we are collectively quite important to the ecosystem, and they're very happy to help it stay that way and to help make sure that influence can survive and thrive on StarkNet for a long time. So, if you're interested in DAO, be aware that it can and will be a messy democratic process, presumably, of getting it started and managing it, but it should be. That's how it's meant to be. Don't worry that it's a bit messy. Get involved, make your voice heard, and yeah, I mean, get excited to be a part of this. Like, I think really unique idea that we're building this world that will ultimately be governed in a fully decentralized way by all of us.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into some questions. I think we'll probably see some show here, but I'm going to be looking at the AMA questions channel for anyone who is typing questions in the voice chat, general chat. I might not look at that for a bit. So I'm going to run through some of these questions, and Chris, just hop in if you'd like to take them.
Sure.
Okay, so what is the state of community missions and events? I know that we briefly covered that, Chris, but maybe you want to give some clarity around just, how far off we might be, or what work needs to get done to make those happen.
Specifically, is that referring to the actually, maybe you can clarify what is that referring to specifically?
Yeah, I think largely one, there's the existing missions that we've kind of stated and have not been implemented.
Yeah.
The code for, and then two, I think, is
Yes.
probably the chain of events.
Okay. Yeah. So the asteroid development focused missions, we have now the access to the data for those that was developed. The UI was not, but we are incorporating that UI into the game. That did cause a bit of delay, and I apologize for that. But that is a work in progress that we will deliver before long, to make sure that those sway rewards related to developing your asteroid are in place. As for the other events, the other random event chains, those are also intended to come as part of this little mini expansion I'm talking about with sabotage and repair and the general terraforming plot line. So we're realizing that there's a lot of pieces that interact quite closely between sabotage and durability repair. The intention of sabotage to impact the collaborative terraforming missions, and then also the event chains that are focused largely around traits, which can have an impact then on basically on durability, new traits that can have impact on durability and repair and sabotage. So we're kind of bundling those all together because I think it's important that we think about all of those pieces cohesively.
Great. All right. Well, moving on to the next question. Has there been any updates on mini hacks?
Unfortunately, no. The modular buildings is definitely a goal, but it hasn't been actively worked on at the moment. It's certainly a great piece of content for for future development, for future content, expansion of content, and we will be working on that. But we've decided to focus initially on this like general sense of purpose that we're building around these terraforming plot points, because we feel like that can introduce a little bit more dynamic nature into the game around PvP and around this significant resource sink that these terraforming plotline events can represent.
Great. All right. Well, then, next question is, when can we expect to see the new TSP and sulfur recipes?
Very soon. Those are ready to go. They just need to be deployed. So I'm hoping next week.
Great. Okay, so I can actually answer this one. Would the team consider creating a mission builder so trusted members of the community can construct mission chains that promote community participation? One, DAO, I think, is going to be a big part of that. Also, there are already teams right now that had received grants from StarkNet that had proposed pretty much this. So while it wouldn't be native to the game, it would be a third party platform to do just this. So I think between DAO kind of having some say here and having the sway to utilize, along with what is being built, I think that supports it quite well. Now, would we support that in game? I mean, I think Chris will probably second this. We'd love to support a lot of things. It's more of just finding the time and prioritizing them within the game. Okay, so Gnarly, been asking in general, but can we please get clarity around the propulsion program implementation? Chris, maybe you want to just give some details around that?
Sure. So the propulsion program, what it is, in case anybody isn't familiar, just set the stage. Propulsion has starts at a 90% rebate of fees that are associated with a given contract to the project that developed the contract. So in our case, that's the dispatcher. And the idea was that every month, StarkNet would calculate how much was spent in fees, and then we would get a rebate of 90%. That percentage will fall over time, eventually reaching zero. The idea is to kind of provide an early boost, and then it's up to the projects how to use that. And we had expressed a desire to use it, at least partially, for subsidizing transactions. And that is still a goal. We think that the most important point to do that is still the first transaction when it comes to deploying wallets for those who are coming on traditional payment rails, and that is certainly still planned. As for subsidizing transactions, I've seen a fair number of suggestions of like, why don't we just turn around and do a rebate? And while that's something that it would be fine, and we'd be happy to do that, it requires a fair amount of development to do, and it doesn't seem like, to be honest, it doesn't seem like it's that impactful because it is retroactive. And for people who are running transactions and still seeing the cost just to get it later, and not even really know when that's going to come later, feels much less impactful than what we could do. And this is something that we're working with Avenue on, and that's the idea of having it be subsidized at the time. So I would much prefer to have that subsidy happen at the time, so that you never have to see the higher cost. You never have to see the higher fee. It happens when you run it. And in my ideal implementation is that anytime fees are over a certain amount, the subsidy kicks in, so that we can have a reliable ceiling on what it costs to play influence. And that ceiling can actually be quite low because the spikes in fees generally, the significant spikes generally, are short-lived. So that's what I'm working on, because I think it's something that can be accomplished with much less effort, and I think it's much more impactful than building out a system that has to index every single transaction, calculate what the price was at the time, calculate 90% of that, and then run through every month, or more frequently, transactions to send the rebates to every single address. I think that's a lot of build that time could be focused instead on developing the game, making payments better. And so we decided to work directly with Avenue to try to get those subsidies to be immediately upfront. So there is, yes, Shiva, there is, and that's what we're looking at. The key thing is there that I want it to be a little bit tweaked a little bit so that it can kick in at certain fee levels. So I'm trying to get that worked out. If we can't, then maybe it's something a little bit more straightforward that we can do. but it is being worked on. I've absolutely not forgotten. I know that high fees, especially high fee spikes, are will immediately result in people playing less. And actually, you can see that on days when fees are high if you look at the metrics. That's obviously not ideal.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for providing some clarity there. I know that people want it. There's some multiple ways of doing it. Okay, so this question has come up quite a bit in general. I see it here in AMA, and it all revolves around, what is UGI's runway? And just simply put, like, this isn't something that we're sharing publicly, nor do we think that it really impacts like what we're doing right now or how you guys are playing. So that's what we could say. I don't know, Chris, if you want to add anything to that, but it's just not a question we're answering.
Yeah, I mean, I could go into a fair amount of detail on why. I won't now, but maybe in the future. But I think in general, the main reason why is that I have dedication to be here. It doesn't matter what the dollars are that are available. The runway I consider as effectively infinite, and it's what I'm working for influence to be is a game that can live forever on the strength of its community. And so I will consider myself and UGI increasingly a part of the community and everybody else a part of the same community. It's why I want to see it focus on a DAO. Why we are making efforts to start to open up the repositories that we have built that typically would represent a company's IP. We are going to open it up and welcome contributions and welcome the management of that ultimately by community. So I think it's quite difficult to really suggest that knowing a runway number at a point in time is really useful without me committing to sharing what that runway is on an ongoing basis, and that's just not something I'm willing to do.
Great. All right. Well, let's move on from that topic. Would UG consider creating a help page that links to internal and community resources? I know that we've had some discussion around this and that we have it on the wiki and we do have a section of it in the game, but something a bit more robust. Again, I would love to see that. If you guys have ideas of how exactly you would like to see that, please let me know. I'm happy to voice that, to the team. I'm sure Chris would be curious, but ultimately, I guess maybe I'm just not quite sure what you mean by that. Like how does it function is my question to you guys. So next question, can we have queuable food replenishments? Yeah, Chris, throw that one to
you. We could. It would require some change in the way that the food algorithm works. To give a little bit of technical background, we don't actually store how much food is deposited into the crew and reduce that over time. We basically calculate a time at which the crew was effectively fully fed in the past. So if you fully feed your crew now, then that time is now. And then as things move forward, we calculate things based on that. So queuing food would require, well, queuing food would require the ability to sort of process a transaction arbitrarily at a specific point in the future. Maybe that's something that can be done with some sort of like keepers system where other people playing influence are incentivized in some way to run arbitrary transactions that have already been signed. I think it's a super cool idea, but it's not something that we're developing right now.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think that answers some some of the other parts of the question, so I'll move on from that one. Now, other questions here is, does the team have a share in the LP on StarkNet dexes for sway trading? We're very clear about this, that you can see it in our tokenomics, like you can see it in the pools. The team has a lot of sway in the pool at the 10,000 sway to $1, but we are not actively, trading across USDC or ETH to sway and back and forth. So if the price does hit that, then yeah, it eats into the sway and the team gets USDC or ETH or whatever it is. But yeah, we're not an active participant in terms of trying to time markets or set ranges at this point. So hopefully that gives you guys some clarity there. And as for once the DAO is formed, would those assets be part of the DAO? No, that is completely separate. That's not part of the DAO. DAO is going to get a whole ton of sway, and that can be used for whatever the DAO decides it to be used for. So yeah, if you have more questions, let me know. Okay, about the DAO formation. Yeah, Cold Snap, I've answered some of those questions around like timing, and whether or not discovery/conflict are affected by that. They are independent. Gray area wind propulsion program. Yeah, we just went into that.
Actually, I might pause and say that although they are independent, we're going to be building discovering conflict no matter what. I actually think that DAO formation will likely accelerate those. I think that more involvement can only make things move more quickly and get things to a more refined point more quickly.
Okay, so gray area question about sway emissions. Has the governor contract issued any sway yet? And if not, does this, when does the team expect to begin doing this? Chris, yeah, you want to take that?
No, it has not. And I don't see much of a reason for it to emit until the player base is at a size that would reasonably support it.
Next question from Thunder is, why not list sway on CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap?
I'm looking at it. We're looking at it now. So I'm looking at how we can do that. Although I actually have a question in return. What is stopping? This is an honest question. I'm not criticizing. What is stopping anybody else from doing it? Maybe there's a reason. I actually don't know. So please, somebody answer.
Yeah, and just for some clarity, I've looked into this. We did it. I looked into it prior to launching. It required, token to be live to really be able to do it, and asked quite a few questions about kind of how the emissions happen, inflation. It asks you to submit potentially, a pretty robust spreadsheet of emission schedules, lockup periods for any tokens. Like it is more involved than I think most. Like it's not a few minute forum. If it was, it would already have been done. And then on top of that, there's just some questions around, I don't want to talk about like legal risk or anything like that, but it's more of just ultimately we're very careful when it comes to the quote unquote promotion of tokens. So we're very we're just very careful with that. So anyways, moving on.
That said, though, if the community is asking for it and we're a blocker in that sense, if there's something we must do that nobody else can do to make that happen, we're happy to do it. Just need to get through that process, and maybe somebody, some multiple people, whatever, DM me if you'd like, can share kind of how it would help, what it would do for us. I'm just curious about that as well. Is it purely visibility, marketing? Doesn't have to be now. We can continue, JB.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Max. No, we're not going to be going into more detail about runway. It's just not a question that we're answering. We've been extremely transparent with how we're building the game every step of the way. Opening up the books and saying, hey, this is how much money we have left. It's just not what we're going to be doing. So you saying, and I know that you've said this before, you're careful about your future time. Influence is still going to be here. So if you want to play influence, it's going to be here.
I actually really respect that concern. A big part of the vision for influence and unstoppable games in general was that concern that when you want to play a game and you're concerned about its future, or the fact that it could be turned off. I mean, that always bothered me too, and it happened to me multiple times. It's happened, I'm sure, to many of you multiple times. And it's a big part of why I'm so eager also to see a DAO form and to see community involvement. It's why we're making moves to open up the client, to open up the contracts to contributions, ultimately to turning over the dev key that you guys have talked about to the DAO. I want influence to be completely anti-fragile, for it to exist regardless of what we do, whether we support it or not. Now, that's not to say that I'm not dedicated to supporting it. I am. I mean, this is a dream I've had for, well, I always used to say 10 years, but more like 14 now. I want to see it continue for as long as is possible, and for myself not to be the thing standing in the way of that. So I definitely respect the concern, and I hope you understand that we are very aligned around making sure that that concern goes away completely. Whether we are funded for 15 years or for 1 month.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to some other questions here. Gainier, I just want to maybe go into your topic a bit. It's not directly just one question, but around kind of random events, being rewarded sway, and a lot of things people suggest in terms of like get sway for doing X thing. And a lot of people point to sell goods directly to the marketplace and get sway. That puts the team in a position to have to like basically take away goods from other people that might want it and then repost them on the marketplace at a different price or burn them. It doesn't really help a peer-to-peer marketplace. I would say that it actually hurts it quite a bit. There have been, talks about how do we do purchases of items, select items, and we've always been very, very clear that this isn't going to be just used for, hey, everyone sell any good to the marketplace. This would be where we find holes in the market. So it's just not a system that we're going to be putting in place specifically for the Prime Council to purchase goods off of you.
Yeah, but I think it's probably useful to think about the goals of the terraforming plotline missions to be very much in line with that. Effectively contributing resources to a mission, to Baya, to determine its feasibility for terraforming, very much a resource sink with specific materials that we'll be targeting. And then again, with the follow-up to that mission, where the goal is to build a permanent space station around Baya in orbit, those are going to be significant resource sinks, and they will require specific products, specific materials. So I think that's probably useful to think about that in those terms.
Yeah, rather than just having a glut of materials for no particular reason being sold to the Prime Council and having to figure out what to do with it. Because I think a lot of people might be actually upset if we say we're buying a bunch of computer chips for X price, and then people sell deeply into those, and then no computer chips for anyone else because people like cool, easy sway. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. Okay, so we're pretty much at time here. Give it another minute or two for questions to roll in. But hopefully you guys have some serious clarity on what we're working at, some of the bigger updates that are coming, clarity around the DAO and expectations or what the team is contributing there versus what the community is, and that you have support from StarkNet. Really, thank you guys. Appreciate it. I know that there's been a lot happening in the community, in the last month, but we're still here. We're still building, and Chris doesn't plan to stop building. Period.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just seeing. I went silent because I see a lot of chat questions here. When can we get the
Can I
team?
ask my question? Because I've been like waiting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Oh fuck, I'm outside. My first question was like for the not the sabotage, but the thing where like the building gets used. Um, are we? Oh my god, I forgot it. Yeah, is it gonna change something like if I do like 1 6 day refining, or if I do like 2 times 1 day, like is it gonna be the use or the time the building is used? I don't know if it's clear.
So are you asking if the durability will go down based on how long you use the building versus like how much materials are produced?
No, how long or how many time I use the building. So like if I do one refining that lasts 1 day, that lasts 6 day, or two that last 3 days, is it like change something?
Oh, I think it would be the same.
Okay, perfect. And
Yeah.
my other question was like, do you plan to do something to filter the building and like navigate better in game? Because at the moment, like it's like a big struggle to find your refinery or and your extractor that are not working. And like if we could like filter it in game, it would be like so much more easy.
So you want to be able to filter your
Yeah,
buildings that are not currently doing anything.
yeah, like like filter, like click like example. Just I see my extractor, and after like I can see like in use or like finished or like idle, like a
Yeah.
bit like Denker website, but in the game.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think there's a lot that we could do that we could allow for filtering on your buildings. Um, it becomes much more difficult if we need to filter on all buildings. But if it's isolated to just your buildings, which it sounds like that's what you care about, I think there's a lot we can do to make that easier. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
just that because like now I have to always use the Denker website, and it's like annoying to use two windows, so it will save a lot of time.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I see some follow-up questions here. On the note, is it possible to have sub-building tab filters for building type? I think I should answer this question with pretty much anything is possible. And filtering can be improved. I have
Well,
heard,
I want to understand that one a little bit better.
yeah, I think
I'm
Chris,
not quite
just
sure I
from
understand.
past conversations, and I've seen similar, is you want to look at all extractors, so you want to look at all refineries that you have in an easy tab to be able to say like, these are all the ones that are running or idle or whatever it is. So
Oh,
just
meaning on the right in the list rather than
yeah, I think rather than in
in
the
the.
advanced search.
Okay, got it.
That
Yep.
way you can kind of filter on screen to see those things. And again, I'll just say I know anything is possible. It's just a matter of actually doing it.
Hmm.
So prioritization. But I mean, I agree. I think there's a lot of things that maybe this is a good thing to add. There are a ton of really good suggestions when it comes to quality of life that I would consider that lean towards consistent players or power users. And as one of them, I do run into things where I'm like, oh, I wish this was easier. Those things are important, but solving the challenges that prevent new players coming in and then being able to navigate the game are definitely higher priority. But I do think that there's a bundle of
Well, one thing to add on that note, Rainier, on learning to code, is that the client will be open soon. So I would love to see a bunch of contributions along the lines of quality of life improvements. We'd be more than happy to review those and make sure that they get in. Not to say we won't build some of these, we will, but I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, I wanted to add one thing, JP, that we haven't mentioned that you've been working on. We're about to have 57 new content creators getting involved.
yeah.
You should mention that.
I should. I've been too in the weeds with it that I forgot to mention it. But yeah, we just basically supplied 57 StarkNet community creators who have been basically dubbed by the StarkNet team as people who create content featuring projects on StarkNet. And we did a poll of who would be interested in playing Influence and helping create content around it. In return, we gave these 57 people out of the few hundred that are part of the Wolfpack League a starter pack, and they are now able to come into the game. And so I'm going to be working with them over the next few weeks to get them up to speed, teach them a little bit about the game, and start to see that trickle of content coming in onto our channels. So I'm really excited about that. Ultimately, I'm sure many of you probably follow our Twitter channel and other channels. They haven't been as active lately because primary content coming from us that's just like, hey, look at this cool thing, doesn't perform nearly as well as when community members post interesting content that then gets pushed by us. And that's just a lot more organic. So, I've been working hard at just trying to bring those people in. Thank you to the StarkNet team for supporting us there. And I'm hoping to see a lot of traction on that coming in the future.
Cool. Well, we ran a bit over.
Yeah. So
good discussion today.
We'll close it out here, but thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll be having another AMA here pretty soon, and we'll be updating you guys as much as possible. Few things. This is recorded. I will have that up on YouTube. I will also be pushing an announcement to the community so that you can have this in writing and it's a bit easier to digest on just the main points. So look for that. And there's a patch notes update if you guys haven't already seen it. So go check that out. Enjoy your day, everyone.